Hi, this is Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's RNK Software Club's video for the week. And the topic for this week is about freestanding lace and how to make a freestanding lace snowflake. And the one that you can see on my screen is one of the designs that comes from your exclusive, RNK Software Club's, monthly designs. And so if you look into your library, for the free monthly designs and find the month of December 2021. Just click on that and then hover over the tab that says designs to see all of the designs that come in that month. And that's where you'll find the design for this large snowflake. There's actually, let's just hide this picture. There's a large snowflake. This one's probably around, 8 inches in size. If you put one of your large hoops on your screen, you kind of get an idea of how big it is. There's also in there a smaller one. And so the smaller ones, there's 2 sizes. So really there's 3 different snowflakes, I guess, that come in the download this month. The largest one, which is, you could reduce it a little bit, but what you're going to find is that some of the columns are quite narrow, and if you tried to make it really, really, really small, I think you'd find that some of these details would become just not really sew very well, is what would happen. They would just be kind of like non-descriptive and just a lot of stitches kind of hammered into the bottom there. So yeah, it's meant to be a bigger snowflake. The smaller ones, if you look at the smaller ones, they don't have quite as much detail to them. In this case, I've got 2 sizes. Let's just measure to see exactly how big they are. This one here looks like it's just around 3 inches tall. And this one here is just like basically just over an inch or almost 2 inches in size kind of thing. And so this one makes a great, pendant or a pair of earrings. These ones make great gift tags or Christmas tree ornaments. And the big ones look really wonderful hung in your window or hung on the tree as well. And so I thought I would show you guys a little bit of how I make these. First of all, how do you digitize them? Well, let's assume that you have a snowflake. In fact, why don't I select one of these snowflakes? I'm just going to, let's see here. I'll select on this design and ungroup it. And then I will zoom in and let's see. I'll hide this blue color and I'll hide that color so that all I can see is the pink, and then I can drag a box around that one little snowflake like that. Maybe just copy it so that it's a new one, and bring it on over here, and that way, even if you want to collapse everything and turn those colors back on, now we've got an extra one. So let me show you how I make if you have your own design like this that you might like to do as a lace piece, first of all, can you sew this snowflake onto the Wet and Gone stabilizer on its own? Well, I mean, obviously you can, but the question is, will it stay together when you get it wet? And the problem there is the little tips, there's really nothing connecting them to anything else. And my feeling is that this would be kind of a floppy piece of lace that may not really stay kind of fully formed. And so this is where we like to do the little kind of mesh backgrounds, which you can see here. And I love to put Mylar, in the mesh. And so I always do like a mesh and then a border. So here's what you do. If you've got a design like this, you can select that design and then use the tools right here. It's called Create Outlines. And what it's going to do is create an outline that goes around your snowflake. So decide how close to your snowflake. The smaller the number you put in here, the closer that little outline will be to the embroidery that's already there. So there's no correct way. Now you can use this tool to make multiple ripples, but for this specific technique, we just need one. We just want an outline that goes around our little snowflake, just a little bit outside of it. And so you say, okay, and notice that it will create a line. And that line kind of contours around with the shape of that little snowflake. And essentially now we take that line and we select that line and we create it into embroidery. And so I guess what I normally do is I use copy and paste so that I have 2 of them that are exactly on top of each other. And the one that is first in the sewing sequence, I choose this tool here down at the bottom called the mesh fill. And it'll put one single layer of mesh in, but I usually, and there's a little selector box right beside where it says sort of the type, and right here, you can choose from a bunch of different patterns. And I usually choose one that has like 2 rows in like going 2 different directions that perpendicularly intersect each other. So for lace, that's a nice thing to do because it kind of interlocks all of that everywhere. I can sense there's a little stitch coming off to the side here. Sometimes you can fix that if you just go to shape mode, and sometimes just moving the exit point to like a different spot can kind of help with that. So try that if you ever find a little stitch going astray, or if not, send it in to support so we can look at it and see what's happening. And maybe we can learn from it if there is a reason. But one way or another, that's the Mylar. This becomes a little bit of a mesh. Mylar would be optional. I'll show you some pictures in a minute of what Mylar is, but you're going to sew this on Wet n Gone. That's our water dissolving stabilizer. Obviously, the problem here is the mesh is like on top of the snowflake, so it's almost like our snowflake's been captured in jail, and what we really want to do is make the mesh sew first, right? So you would select that fill, and you would move it to the beginning of your sewing sequence so that it's before the snowflake. Now I kind of jumped a little bit ahead of myself because I didn't treat the border. Remember, I copied and pasted that that shape, and so I need to take that second one and create a steel stitch. And I'll make that so after the mesh. So I guess now what I'm going to have to do is bring it all the way to the beginning and then move it down 1. So that it's after that mesh. And then I make them be a color stop in between. I usually use the same color thread, but by changing the color in the design, it will force the machine to stop. So what'll happen is it'll start out sewing that mesh, and then I will sew on top of a piece of Mylar. So the Mylar will be taped on top of my Wet n Gone. And then I remove the Mylar by tearing it. Tears around the edge. And then the second color was that border. And that border would give, would kind of clean off the edge of your little snowflake and capture around the edge of the Mylar. Cleans it up, looks nice. And then I guess it'll be the very last thing in this design will be when the snowflake kind of sews on top of it. And so I use that tool a lot. If you've got already an embroidery design and you want to create a mesh background behind it, that's a quick way to do it. Of course, we have our lace fill tool, which also would work. And the only difference there would be, and let me just select that sort of background fill again, copy it so that we have like a second copy of it. And instead of doing it as a mesh fill, if you do it as a lace fill, so that's the tool on the bottom sort of towards the right, it does a mesh background. Yes, it does a more intense mesh background, so it makes it more solid, and it wouldn't show the Mylar as much solid like that. And what it also does is it puts a double border. This is really for if you're making a shape that you want it to look like a solid shape and hold that shape. Maybe you've got a little, baseball bat or a little, cactus that you want to put on a scrapbook page. You could use the lace fill tool and it creates a lace fill. You don't have to, it creates 3 color stops, but you can sew them all in one color and make it, sort of like a single color lace piece. Just select it and right click and you can say single color lace. So what I'm telling you is I use both methods. Sometimes I do a lace fill like this because I just want a lace piece for that shape. But when I do a snowflake and I'm capturing it over Mylar, I use the mesh fill tool because it gives a more open space. And then I make my own copy and put a single border around it. So not as rigid as you'll get when you have the double border. This is sort of like foolproof lace. It'll always hold its shape, never kind of move a little bit. Anyhow, either way, both methods work wonderful for making lace. Now, the way that I made it today, the designs, as you know, are in the December 2021. That said, if you love the big snowflake, just look in December 2020. where there was, that was the second one, because the first one was December 2019. That was the first year that I was the software manager here at R&K. And so I guess that's 3 years in a row now. I've done a nice big snowflake and a set of small ones. And so if you're keeping track, that's 3 big lace snowflakes and 9 earring size or ornament size ones that you could totally do as a set. All that said, you guys, I've got photographs queued up to show you how to make it. So first of all, hoop up your wet and gone, and the best tip I can give you with hooping wet and gone is it's very thin, and it's very important that the hoop holds it well. Because if you start putting your sort of mesh down and this lace is able to move, so notice the Grippy tape, that's called, that's R&K Perfect Grip tape. I've cut little strips of it. And what I do is I put down the outer hoop ring. I put down the wet and gone over top. I lay the Perfect Grip tape on top of that, and then I sandwich the inner hoop ring in. And this Grippy stuff really makes sure that along this edge, because I always find the corners is where the fabric is held the best. But right along this edge, if you poke with your finger right there, if that fabric moves, sure enough, you put a big area of fill on here and try and put a border around it, chances are that border is not going to line up with that fill. And let me tell you, when borders and fills don't line up in lace, it's not successful, right? Things don't look perfect. So there's my tip for you. You need to put something in your hoop. Floriani has R&K Perfect Grip tape, and that's really an awesome thing for it. The cool thing about this tape is it's not actually tape, and when I take the hoop off, I've used this purple tape here to make, I recently stitched out 16 of these big snowflakes as Christmas gifts, and not to mention about 24 little earring size ones too. And so this is how it goes. Hoop up your wet and gone. My suggestion is use some Grippy tape in there to help it hold. Then, and there's a close-up of your Grippy tape. So what I'm telling you is this tape has no adhesive. It's grippy, but the only thing it actually sticks to really is itself. So there's a lot of uses for it, and I'm only showing you one of them. Sometimes I just cut a little piece and roll it up and use it like a little finger grip. I wrap it around my fingers. But in this case, I put them in my hoops. I'll take this out of this hoop and use it in the next hoop and the next hoop and the next hoop. It doesn't, disintegrate. In fact, you could use them for a very long time, these strips that you cut. So now I've taped the Mylar on top. So you can see what Mylar is. R&K has Mylar in our Embellish product line. So not from Floriani, but from Embellish. It's a cool product. You'll find it in most sewing stores. We'll have some kind of a Mylar. It's basically pearl colored, so it looks kind of shiny, but it takes on the color. It takes on a lot of colors. It can take on the color of the embroidery, take on the color of what's in front of it, what's across from it. It's actually kind of clear and rainbow looking. Anyway, it's a topper, and you can put it on top of anything. Doesn't have to be lace. You could do Mylar, on a sweatshirt. I'm just making it so that I have sparkly snowflakes. And so you tape it to the wet and gone, and then you embroider that first color on it. And now it's time to remove. Remember, I've got a color stop between the mesh fill and the border, and that's when I remove the Mylar. It'll just pull off. It's like very easy, very, very easy. If you buy Mylar that was designed for embroidery, that's the point, is that it's very shiny, but also tears very easily along your stitch lines. And so then you go back to the machine and you sew the border on it. And then you sew the snowflake on it. So I'm just pointing out here that I always include a little loop on designs like this. It gives you a way to hang them. And one of the tips that I often give is how to snatch them. If you're doing your own lace piece, maybe you need a lace, I don't know, baseball bat to wear to the baseball game. You want to make some lace baseball bat earrings. And so you get your little baseball bat shape, and sure, you can click on lace fill and boom, you're pretty much ready to make them, other than you might want to look at the size because that's a pretty big earring. But some of us like big earrings, so that's not wrong to have a 2-inch, 2.5-inch earring. But that said, if you wanted to put a loop on it to use to make your clasp, there are loops right here in the designs that we made for you, and all you would really need to do is so when you select these designs, as long as you ungroup them, then you could zoom in and select just that little loop and hit your copy button. And so now you've made a new copy of the loop, and you could decide where on the baseball bat do you want it to dangle. I guess, and now if you're doing it as an earring or a pendant, you have to decide where you want it to be. Maybe you want to rotate the baseball bat and put it right on the on the end of it here. One way or another, what you're going to want to do is sequence it so that loop sews before the baseball bat. Does that make sense? Because you kind of want to hide that a little bit, so you tuck it under the baseball bat, and then make sure that the baseball bat sews after the loop. That way the loop appears kind of connected to it. And there you go. You made yourself a pair of baseball bat earrings. Anyway, coming back to the photographs, there's your loop. And there's your finished embroidery. Okay, so look how beautifully, and can you sense how little of that kind of fabric has puckered and pulled in? I'm telling you, if I didn't have that purple stuff in here, these little pucker lines would be much, much worse, and a very good chance that there would be a problem with the edge of the border of my lace, specifically in this area here. So that's my tip for you guys on sewing lace. Use some Grippy stuff. Now you've removed it from the hoop, you trim all your excess water dissolving material. Save that stuff for a later date. It works great for creating kind of like a bit of a liquid starch. You can reconstitute it, get it wet, and that's for another day. But for today, we can learn about I always flip this over and trim off any, before I get it wet, I make sure I trim both sides. Get all the threads out of it, because once it's wet and then dry, it's a lot harder to trim threads. They become kind of almost cemented together, really. So now you can see that it's kind of still wet. It went into the water and out. And to do a lace piece like this, you don't want to leave it in the water too long. You want to dissolve it, but leave most of the wet and gone sort of in the project, because it will make it stiff. It gives it a nice, crisp, firm, rigid feeling. If you were trying to make your snowflake softer, then you would rinse it and rinse it again. And the more you rinsed it, the softer it would be. Of course, you've got Mylar in there, so it's never going to be extremely soft, but you get the idea. The wet and gone makes it nice and firm, and that way when I cool it, or I guess I don't cool it, I dry it, I lay it flat on a table, press it with my hands to kind of make sure it's laying flat, and then let it dry. If you're having troubles with them drying flat, you can put a book on them or something. It makes them take longer to dry, but they will be perfectly crisp flat. But this is how beautiful they look when you're done. And now the most amazing place to hang this is actually in the window, because this is, as much as it's shiny, it's still translucent and you can see right through it, and they're really amazing. And so yeah, this is the smaller two sizes, so basically the whole process is repeated. Tape your Mylar on your wet and gone, embroider your first color, pull the Mylar off, sew the second color and the third color, and then take it out of the hoop and remove the excess and get them wet. And these make, like I said, really great earring sizes. And so yeah, I'd love to see a picture of you wearing your earrings. That would make me so happy. You could send it to us by email, or you could post it on our Instagram or our social media, or our Facebook page, I guess is what I mean to say. When I make earrings, what I do is I'll take those earrings and then I'll copy and paste them to make like sets of them. So here I've got 6 sets of earrings all in one hoop. So I kind of do all of color 1. Let me show you how I do this. I do all of color 1, then I tear all the Mylar off, then I sew the borders, and then the rest of the little earrings. And that way, when you're done, and like I said, I recently made a lot of these for Christmas presents. So what are you guys sewing this time of year? I always do lace at Christmas for sure. I wanted to show you guys what I'm saying. So if you wanted to do a sheet of earrings, you would come in and select just those 2 earring pieces. Maybe copy them and start a new workspace, and then paste them together, or paste them on, sorry, not together. And what I usually do is put them side by side like this, so that I know, okay, you guys are a set. In fact, what I can do here, I'll group this one, select all of this one, and group that one. And now that they're grouped, I could use the alignment tool. So like, if I wanted to make sure they were perfectly aligned, I can just select both of them. Oh, now where did one of them go? Here, undo. That was weird. Select both of them. And then up here, I've got my alignment tool. So select, maybe I'll align them by top, so they're all, balanced along the same top line. And I've got them kind of side by side. So now this is the tool here that's called Repeat Design. And so you decide, I guess, how big your hoop is. Notice that where it's repeating like 2 by 2, sometimes I'll do, like a sheet like that. So that's like 6 sets right there. Notice that you need to increase. There's no space right now in between the repeats. And so you might want to come in here and just add like, 5 or 10. Oh, that's 5 inches. Well, that wouldn't be bad. Let's do 0.2 of an inch and 0.2 of an inch. I often do this in metric, and that's why I was thinking 5 millimeters, not inches, but there you go. So now I've got them all kind of like tightly put together, but yet nicely spaced out. And you can just, make sure that you have an embroidery hoop that's going to fit those, and center those into your embroidery hoop. And so I think if you wanted to do, like something like a 240 by a 240 hoop would probably be big enough, and then center it to your hoop, and you're ready to go. So it really depends on what size hoop you've got to how many earrings you can do at one time. But 54,000 stitches is plenty of stitches to put on one layer of Wet and Gone. I'm not saying that you can't put more than that, but it does really make it important to do a good job of that hooping, because you don't want to sew all those fills and all those borders and not have them line up. And so there's quite a few stitches by the time you finish all of those fills. Before you start sewing the borders, you've traveled almost 10,000 stitches. And so that's the reason why it's very important to use that grippy stuff when you do lots of lace in a big sheet like this. So, okay, you guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Until next week, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.